Hello and welcome to The Life Burst, a Wixoss podcast where we talk about leveling. There's got to be something I can say here. I've been thinking about it for a while. If you want to level up to your next stage, you come here to grow. Something like that, you know?
We'll
something
figure
with
it
grow
out.
and leveling. Comment below as to what you want to have us open with from now on.
Yeah. You know what? We're just going to switch it up every week until something feels right.
Until it clicks.
Yeah, until it clicks.
Welcome
everybody.
Welcome. I'm Andrew.
Hi.
I'm one of your co-hosts here.
Oh my god, hi.
Who's
How are
the-
you?
Hello. Who's the other co-host here?
Hi, I'm Tiffany. Welcome back, everybody. For those of you that have been listening to us for a while, and if you're new here, subscribe, because do it.
Yeah, totally. I'm going to start off before we actually kick into anything here. I want to try something. Instead of doing the call to action with a comment below at the bottom of the podcast, which I don't think people will listen to. What if we did it at the beginning, right? What if we said, what do you think about Quadrant Theory, the thing that we're about to talk about? Tell us your thoughts. How do you evaluate cards?
Do you even know what it is? Because I didn't know until Andrew took some time to explain it to me.
Right, which is what we're going to talk about now.
Yeah.
We're going to skip the how's your Wixoss week been, because we did not do Wixoss this week.
We did some play testing.
Yes, we did some play testing.
Which we will be making a video about later, but we wanted to make this video first as kind of like a precursor, so you guys can have a little bit of a better understanding as to why we're picking the cards that we are for our particular decks. And, you know, if you guys have, picked something different for your decks, or if you play something different because it feels better, then you guys can comment that down below and explain your reasoning, but this is our reasoning. And we also felt like this was just a really interesting deck building theory to share with you guys. Like I said, it's something that I was completely unfamiliar with, and it feels like kind of next level thinking in terms of building a deck.
So Quadrant Theory comes from Marshall Sutcliffe in I know I've got the names, and Lewis Scott Vargas LSV in Magic the Gathering. Mostly it goes towards limited or sealed / draft in Magic. And those games, generally speaking, rely much more on board state than they do on what Magic is pretty much well known for, which is the stack. You know, that's where you have your counter spell wars and then bolt to the face, blah blah blah.
The order of resolve.
Yeah. Realistically, the nuts and bolts Magic for limited is the board state, right? Creatures attacking, trying to get in there, hit the face, and whatever. And because of that, it actually has a lot of things that are similar to Wixoss. And because Wixoss is a board state game, right? Like, what is on the board? This is what I'm dealing with. There's very few ways for my opponent to interact with me, generally speaking, right? You mostly just decide on, all right, these lanes are the lanes. This is what the pieces in my hand can do. And their board presence will be known for a turn, and then they won't matter anymore. And as such, Quadrant Theory, I think, is a pretty good way to use it to evaluate cards. You can do this twofold, right? A card evaluation is good when a set's just about to come out, and you're going, well, are these cards any good? Are these cards something that I want to add to my deck? Are these something that I want to add to my collection in case my meta swings a certain way, et cetera, right? The other way that it could be good is for threat evaluation while you're actually literally playing the game. Because you need good card evaluation to look at something and say, yeah, that's fine, or no, I need to deal with this immediately, right?
I think that's especially useful if you're maybe if you're a new player, or if you're a player like me and you don't take the time to memorize every single card that exists within the set. You're kind of more just focused on your deck. It's really helpful to be able to make those decisions mid-battle when you come across something that you've never really seen before, or it's got a bunch of text on it and it's upside down so you can't read it, one of those situations.
Yeah, and you're right. When you play against cards long enough, you can start seeing, oh, this card shows up over and over and over again. That card must be good. But that if you're only doing card evaluation based on that alone, one, you're going to be delayed in a scenario where someone pulls out a card you've never seen before, and you have to decide immediately whether or not this is going to be an issue. And two, you'll run into scenarios like what's our normal card that we always talk about when we're talking about powerful cards, right? That's Lancelot, and
or Chandelier.
Right. Unless you are discarding a Lancelot or you are seeing it off the top of their deck, like with the Code Circus, and putting it to the bottom of their deck. Lancelot, when it comes out, it does its thing and it's done, which means that your threat evaluation for that should be low at that point. So I think when we're talking about these card evaluations, right, it's good to have a good card evaluation. It'll make you just a better player in general.
But it's not only like signies that you can use this for, it's also spells, and even more importantly, your center Lorig as well as your assist Lorig in terms of how beneficial they would be to your center. And even evaluating things like pieces that you can add in to your deck like later on. Or ones that maybe you're like kind of experimenting with. This is another method. It's just like it works for all the cards that you would need to build a deck. So when we're talking about these, we'll go through a couple different ones as examples to kind of show you guys like how this works.
Yeah, totally. So without beating around the bush anymore, what is Quadrant Theory? Inevitably, it's a way to card evaluate. That uses 4 quadrants, right? For board states 4 times of the game, and decides, is it good at that point or is it bad at that point? And it's a sort of binary function. If it's good, great, that's a yes. It's a check mark, right? If it's bad, then it's a no, whatever. If it's a maybe, then it's probably just a, I don't know, 50%, I guess you could do, but it's probably you got to decide one or the other with Quadrant Theory to be successful. And there are 4 quadrants. And Tiffany, do you remember what the 4 quadrants are off the top of your head?
No, I'm literally looking them up right now. So I have a list of them because I always forget what they are.
Well, okay. So the first,
so sorry.
No, you're good. The first one is and let's also point out that the higher you get to the 4 number, right? It checks off on the first quadrant, the second quadrant, the third quadrant, the fourth quadrant. The higher the number you get out of that, it doesn't mean that's card's powerful. It means that card is flexible. It means it's good at various states in the game. That's actually the one thing that I will say that Quadrant Theory does fail in, is scaling power. For example, something might rate 2 on a Quadrant Theory, and it might excel better than any other card in those 2 things that it functions incredibly well with, in which case it's still a powerful card. It just has timing limitations in terms of when it's powerful. So, without any further ado, we'll look at the first part of Quadrant Theory, which is the early game.
First quadrant.
Is that how we're doing it?
I don't know.
Or announcing
it seemed appropriate.
Like a robot from now on. The Madoka announce.
No, Madoka has even more personality than that. This is more like Bang, I guess.
Yeah, can we just... Okay, I know we gotta talk about Quadrant,
can't.
but can we talk about how Bang and Madoka should be switched, because Bang is an AI and Madoka's a person? Doesn't make any sense. We'll talk about this more in our anime recap episode.
Subscribe if you'd like to see that. Or hear it, rather.
So the first quadrant is early game. Now, what are you looking for in early game? Let's give this to our aggro expert on the field.
Open lanes and swing heavy early.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just anything that you can do to, like, stop momentum from forming in the first, like, part of the game is good. And outside of the whole, like, aggro stance of, like, strictly clearing signies and opening lanes and swinging through, things like discarding cards from your opponent's hand early in the game is another great way to do that.
Yeah, sure.
So anything that you can do to gain some sort of, like, momentum advantage over your opponent, I'd say would be a good thing.
All right, so let's talk about Bang's level 1, Bang Capaccio or something like that. It's the level 1 that allows you to enter charge 2 when it comes in. It costs 0 to do the assist grow. Would that pass on the first quadrant, which is early game? Is it good in the early game?
I have to read the card.
It's Bang Level 1 grow with 0 cost. Enter charges 2.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Because what you're doing is you're giving yourself options earlier in the game because you can only enter charge once per turn, which is fine unless you're spending a lot of enter for certain abilities or things like that, which ends up putting you behind. So what you're doing by enter charging 1 or 2, whichever it is, you're actually gaining a turn. You're gaining 2 turns anytime you enter charge 2.
Right, you're ramping on your resources, which is good. So that's a good example of something that could be a pass in that respect. What about Romel?
You're talking about the level 1 red?
Yep.
Okay. So that one says it's a level 1 Signy with 2,000 power, I think. That's right. And you on enter you pay 1 to vanish target Signy 3,000 and below. It's fine. I mean, obviously it's not as good as Lancelot, which increases
Right, but we're not talking about the card in total.
but-
We're just talking about the 1 quadrant early game. Is it good in the early
I
game?
think so because it's a level 1 Signy, which means that you can play it your first turn. If you're going second, you can immediately use your enter to clear a lane and then get that much more damage in.
Yeah.
I would say that that's perfectly fine for the early game.
Yeah, another one might be if, and it's a combo here, if you play out the Neon Tetra, which freezes Signy, and then Bradamante, which then vanishes that Signy and makes the opponent discard a card at the end of their turn, right? You're drilling down their resources early. And something that's worth mentioning, I think, when we're talking about that combo is when we're saying it's good in early game, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's an aggro card.
Yeah.
It just means that it helps you in your early game.
Yeah.
Another good example for that that's not aggro in the slightest would be Random Drain, right? Random Drain can...
Random bad?
Random bad. Random Drain can snuff out a opponent's card in their hand, probably something that's good for what they're doing to set up.
Isn't that one, it costs 1 blue as well?
Yeah.
Which means that if you go second, you can use that right away, which is another good thing.
You can use it on the first turn too. I mean, it's
oh yeah, you could.
You enter charge immediately.
Yeah.
So I think it's not called enter charge. I think we got to clarify that terminology when you are in your enter like stage enter set.
There's the enter phase and then there's
phase.
the main phase,
Correct.
which you would use to play the card.
So the enter phase is not enter charging. You are doing
it's a
enter
phase of enter.
So okay, let's talk about some other good ones. Let's talk about some assists that actually we talked about Bang. Is there any other assists that might be good in early game that excel early game?
I would say a lot of the card jockey team's pretty good. Oh man, I can't remember the name. It's BJ Wolf and also DJ Lovett. Well, DJ Lovett's great because the text on that card is just vanish target Signy.
Yeah.
And it you grow 0 and it's vanish target Signy. And even though it's on your main phase, whatever, I don't think there's any assists that have attack phase timing.
There is one.
One.
There's a single one. Do you know what it is?
Is it Madoka?
No, it's not Madoka.
Oh, okay.
It's Nova.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I don't know if it's any good, but it's Nova does do it.
So those are great because that immediately gives you an advantage. Ray, I forget which one it is, but
Lunar Blade is the one I think
Lunar
you're
Blade,
say. Yeah.
which is draw 1 and then your opponent discards 1 at random. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's almost a perfect assist depending on what you're trying to do because it gains you a card while your opponent does not loses a card.
Right. And let's talk about draw because draw is not super important in this game. I mean, it's good. Don't get me wrong, but it's not as important as it is in other games. But it's actually kind of arguable, and I think this is something we can talk about. Is draw good in any of the quadrants that we're going to talk about, including the early game? And I think the answer is to set up your early hand is so important in Wecross that draw should be considered good in early game. Because other times it's considered dirtly, right? You're just sort of spinning your wheels, not doing very much. Therefore, not so great. But I think in Wecross, because it's so important to get a level 1 Signy, and then the next turn to put out a level... Any combination of a level 1 or level 2 to fill out your entire field.
Or
it's very
gain
important.
like an early game guard would be the other reason.
So I think we got a pretty good grasp on what the first quadrant is. Tiffany, do you know what the second quadrant is?
Is it parody?
Well, parody definitely could be it, but if we're doing in turn order, there's also the mid game, I believe.
Is it mid game?
Yeah, and again, these I think you got the actual technical terms up there, and I'm
Yeah,
not using them. I'm using a dumbed down version of it.
I'm looking at the Magic the Gathering article.
Yeah, what are the Magic the Gathering specific terms?
Okay, so the specific terms that are coming from the Magic the Gathering article on this is opening or developing, parody, winning, and losing.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're talking about parody as in Parity, not parody, like Weird Al or something. Like and it's not parry either. So
parody. Let me I'm gonna just say these. I was gonna use fake terms that were a little bit more generic so people could understand them. But parody means that when you and your opponent are at literally equal footing, right? It means that like. I've got a couple Signy on the field. They've got a couple Signy on the field. We've both grown the equal amount. Neither one of us has a clear advantage over the other. A winning literally should basically say late game or like getting to the end, basically helping you get to that finish line. And then losing means when you're behind, right?
Right.
There are times, for example, where you're going to be like, I do this, and then someone's going to nightmare step you and wreck your board or something. And you were like, oh... or more commonly, I guess, no limit is attacking you, and you are at like 2 life cloth left, and you still have 5 to go from there. You're not realistically, you're not realistically going to win from that state, but you are behind, and you're trying to get back to potentially parity.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's talk about the next one, which is parity. Parity is when you and your opponent are perfectly equal footing, right? So there are
you have 3 life cloth, they have 3 life cloth.
So there are some cards that are going to get a bump in that scenario. For example, early game, I don't really care if something has Lancer. It's cool if it does. Lane opening is probably more important in the early game, but in parity, Lancer or maybe even Assassin becomes much better, right? Because Assassin strands that resource of the opponent on the field and then gets around it and still manages to get some damage in. Some other things that might help you break parity, right? That's what we're going to be focusing on here, is drawing cards. I think that one is where you start saying like, yeah, that actually does help you in parity.
I think, yeah, it definitely would, because it just gives you more options to choose your path at gaining ground again. So whether that's, you draw a card and you get like a rise and you've been pulling nothing but ones, speaking from personal experience, then that can definitely help you. Or if you draw something that is like a spell, like Deafening Inferno, and you've got, you're on the ropes, you've got one like enter, it's red, and you draw a Deafening Inferno, well, that's going to help you gain momentum by being able to most likely just clear a lane with one enter and then attacking through.
Right. And I do also want to state that, like, for example, the next thing we're going to be talking about is winning and if you're behind. Drawing cards doesn't actually help you when you're behind because you need immediate action. So it's worth noting that there are, like, you can kind of twist these terminologies to try to make it fit your thing, but I don't think that drawing would work in those latter two. I think parity is the only time when you're trying to figure out how to break parity. Drawing is an acceptable answer there.
Oh, okay.
What's some other ways that you could break parity?
Freezing?
Yeah. I'd say freezing would be a good way to break parity, because you're denying them the chance to, if it's like a shoving match where I shove you, you shove me, and I freeze your thing and you can't do anything about it, right? And you leave that frozen thing on the field, then yeah, it becomes pretty good way to break parity. But if we're doing a more direct break of parity, here's some other options, I think. Recurring stuff from your discard pile. Specifically, maybe guards. Could be a good way to break parity because you're now gaining an incremental advantage. If you put some kind of engine together to be like, hey, this triggers this, which then allows me to gain a resource, right? That could be a good way to break parity as well. Bang is a great, for example, this Bang Center is a good way to break parity because Bang Center gives your level 3 green Signy Lancer. Which means that inevitably you're just being like, it doesn't, if you do the same exact amount that I do, except I have Bang, I will win this game. Which is a good way to start breaking parity.
Would having things that pump up your creatures, like giving them plus 3,000, would that be another way to break parity?
Well, how is that? It's a good question. Let's go down that thought. If you give them, you're just pumping their power, how does that break parity?
Because let's say that you were at some sort of stalemate on the field, like they've got a row of 10,000, you've got a row of 10,000, and you grow your center. Let's say it's Hirana that I think has a constant of plus 3,000 or something like that.
Yeah, it's plus 2,000 on attacks, I think.
Yeah. So having something like that, which will be able to give you just that slight advantage for you to be able to bust through or, stop your opponent from being able to wipe your board, I think might be another good thing.
Yeah. So that's a good example here of breaking parity. It's not necessarily the power boost that's breaking the parity. It's breaking through walls. And so if you're like, I there's a bunch of things here that are 12,000. I've got 12,000. I get an attack boost though of 2,000. So I'm going to break these walls, and eventually they'll draw level 1s that aren't that big, or they'll draw a spell and miss. Then yes, that is a way to break parity. Another way to break parity would be discard effects.
Kind of like what we were saying with Lunar Blade, where anytime that you can kind of take things away from your opponent, then that's a good thing to do. Or random drain is another good one, which, we said it helps you in the early game, but it also really helps you in parity as well.
And you'll see that we'll repeat some cards over and over again, and that doesn't mean that it means that it's actually good for the card, right? The more points they can gain on this quadrant scale, the better it is for them. So let's go move on to the next topic, which is winning, right?
Or when you're ahead,
right? More
or less. And how do you stay ahead?
Exactly. How do I get to the point where I'm putting my I don't know I'm going with this metaphor, but I'm trying to now win this game. A good way would be like a proactive board wipe, like Nightmare Step would be a good thing, right? Nightmare Step is okay if you're in any of these other quadrant states, but it's really good when you're ahead, right? You're just being like, let me wipe this board out, and now I attack for the win. Great Reversal, another one that can do it. Do you
want to talk about Robin Hood?
Robin Hood is a great one. Again, this is why Robin Hood's a bad card, though, even though one of my favorite cards. It's because it excels at this one part of Quadrant Theory and is terrible in all the other ones.
AKA it gets a 1 out of 4.
Yeah.
And we're really looking for a deck of 3 out of 4s or 4 out of 4s.
If possible, yeah.
If possible.
So the truth of the matter is that anything that's helping you basically secure that win. I think one of the reasons why No Limit is such a good deck is because it has plenty of these things, right?
I mean, even if you're looking at Hirana just by herself, I would say she checks off all of the boxes.
Yeah.
Just like as you read down her card, you're like, okay, this is going to help me in the early game because I draw a card and enter charge 1 on enter. It's going to help me at parity because it's going to pump my stuff. And it's going to help me stay ahead because I will be able to do 2 life cloth crushes, and they can't, or no, that's not on Hirana. That's on their piece. Sorry about that.
Right. So often they do it at the same exact time.
I mean, but if you look at her ability, you are able to essentially get 2 more damage in, and also rid your opponent's hand of a guard or 2 potentially.
100%. And I think a great thing that we should circle back to is talking about Hirana and Tawa. as two different centers and put them on the scale to see where they land, because I think that's why you'll find out that white towel is not super great.
Well, when you compare them, yeah.
Yeah. And so basically anything you're doing to help secure yourself the victory of the game will do it, right? Let's talk about the last one before we go on and we just start talking about random cards, where they land, and our opinions on them. And that would be losing, or when you're behind.
When you're behind.
So I think that when you're behind, there are some cards that will inevitably help you out. Bang de Capo, probably one of the strongest ones, right? Pops out there, says, let me just go ahead and prevent 2 of these damages, right? Let's say the life cloth difference here is 4 to 2, and you guys are both reliably smacking 2 life cloth a turn somehow, right? But your opponent is ready to go, right? Okay, if they smack you from 2 to 0, and now it's 4 to 0, that is insurmountable to come back from. Bang de Capo comes out, prevents 2 of those damages. You swing back now with yours, smacking their life cloth from 4 to 2. You've now just made that life cloth difference 2 to 2. That is a much more manageable place. From single-handedly, you've now stopped yourself from losing and given you a chance to go back to parity.
Yeah. Another one that has saved my butt so many times in the card jockey deck is VJ Wolf Sync, which literally regrows a life cloth. That's another great way to be like, okay, I might be behind, but this is how I'm going to get ahead, or this is how I'm going to bring it back to parity.
Right, and that one is a really good example, too, because if you, let's say you look at the top card of your life bursts, right, and your life cloth, and you see it has no life burst whatsoever. You take that, you shuffle it back in, you pull 2 random ones off the top, then you reveal, they come in with their 2 attacks, you reveal the first one's got a life burst, you vanish something, right? Next one, vanish something again.
Or
that is,
gain a guard or something.
Yeah, that's huge. There's a huge swing in tempo. You went from losing that game to suddenly being at parity, if not winning. So yeah, the cards that help you from behind. Another thing that you can do when you're being helped from behind is things like, for example, why am I brain farting? It's freezing is a good one. A lot of the things that we said, resource denial stuff.
Fenrir?
Fenrir, yeah, is a great one. There's
so annoying.
There's decks that just play Fenrir. You know, it has a team ability, which is the discard, right? Which is great. But there's decks that play Fenrir just because it enters and freezes too. Like, that is a good defensive ability, aka a pretty good one from when you're behind. It staves, like damage prevention, it technically is damage prevention because it's staving off those attackers.
Yeah. You know what? That's actually a really good way to look at it. Is anytime that you can prevent damage, that's how you need to look at things. Is you're not necessarily blocking, you're not necessarily like negating an attack. You're just stopping damage from coming through. Yeah.
But outside of that too, we have certain defensive stuff, like for example, I'm gonna pull Gap Bear. Gap Bear combo is a good defensive thing where you're using the bear whose name I cannot say.
Nobody Betsu. Nobody Betsu. We call her Weird Bear because she does weird stuff and she's a bear.
She basically if there's a hole in your Signy, she fills that hole. She fills that lane, and then she can then go to the inner zone and bring something back with her, right? And
which means that you can bring something back like Gap.
Right, Gap. I think Gap Fallen Angel or something like that. It is the one that allows you to, for an enter, bring a level 1 out of your discard pile and put it back into an empty Signy lane. So it basically fills your Signy lanes. And ambushing in general is also another way to do it. For example, Haniel, Life Burst.
Oh yeah, the Life Burst, yeah.
There's been plenty of times where you're staring down at I've had times where I'm staring down two attacks, 2 open lanes, right? Or even three, right? And they hit me with one of them, flip of Haniel Life Burst, lets me fill out that other lane, use Haniel's ability to then get a Lancelot on the other lane, and then kill one of the Signies that
or even just put something in front of a thing that's going to swing through. Like, you know it's going to die. Like, you might draw something like a Romail or another Haniel, and you just want to put it in front of something and then kind of basically stop damage and then simultaneously give yourself a little bit of enter. cards like that are great.
Yeah,
especially when you're in that like falling behind kind of stage.
What's that one card named again too? I'm showing Tiffany a thing.
Oh my god. I really can't remember. I almost put this one in my Umer deck though.
I'll look it up. Cover for me.
You're talking about it's a blue Signy that she like does something. Oh, that's what she does. When Andrew pulls up the name, you guys will be able to look it up and look at the specific text for it. But she basically, if she were to be vanished, instead she flips over to be face down, and then you can play another Signy on top of her for the next 2 turns, and then if she survives those 2 turns, then you can flip her back over or something like that.
Yeah.
That's supposed to help you. Is that what you're trying to say? Is that card would be good in the late game?
That card is good defensively, yes.
Oh, okay. For defense.
Parthenos.
Yeah.
So Parthenos specifically says, during your opponent's turn, if the Signy would leave the battlefield, instead you could turn it face down. If you do, at the beginning of your following main phase after your next main phase, so like in 2 turns. If there's nothing in this Signy zone, you can turn it face up and your opponent discards 2 cards. This is an example of a card that is good at one specific thing, like one part of Quadrant Theory, but isn't a good card. That's why I wanted to bring it up. So you can be good at one part of Quadrant Theory, but again, Quadrant Theory fails in scaling. It doesn't tell you how good a card is or not. It just tells you how flexible they are to be used at any point, how reliable they are. Mm-hmm. And Parthenos is a bad card. That I think you can. It's like one of the only secret rares that you can probably pick up for $2.
It gets like a 0.5 out of 4
yeah.
on the Quadrant Theory like scoring card.
So yeah, and that's like another thing too that I won't get too deep into. But if you decided to take the Quadrant Theory a step further, I think something you could do is do a grading scale of like 0 to 1, 1 being extremely good and 0 being terrible, and you could do the 0.5 stuff, and then you get a literal card rating, and you could use that card rating to then discuss whether or not something is very good. It would be more like gymnastic scales though, where if you got if you got a 4, that means that card's absolutely broken, right? It would be the thing.
Oh, so you're saying that for each quadrant they need like a score of like 1 out of like 10, and then you add all of those up to get like a total of like 40 or something.
Right. Something like that would be how you would do it. But right now, I think the important part, if you're just learning how to evaluate cards, would be to go ahead and just basically do it binary and say yes or no, and leave scaling to another day.
Yeah, let's not get too into the weeds of that for sure.
So I think we've gone over what is a good from when you're behind stuff, and I also want to say that the first part too that we talked about, I forgot to mention this, but when it's like early game, another thing that you can look at is calling it setting yourself up, like setting your deck up, right? If your deck is goal is
Grinding
to
it.
stall and then get there, right? Early game stall cards are good. If your deck's goal is to draw a bunch of cards and then, I don't know, discard cards to deal damage to the opponent, I have no clue what you would be doing. You would then say this would be good in the early game setup. It's not just good in the early game as the generic, like, is this taking away life cloth? Although you probably should try to take away life cloth early game. But you can also say that this is good setting myself up for success, then that could also count as a yes for a card.
So, now that we've thoroughly discussed all the phases of Quadrant Theory and given you guys a little bit of examples, do you want to just, like, pick 1 to 3 random cards out of this, like, database that we're looking through and kind of do that?
But I will start with one card that we know off the bat is a good card. Just so that way we have a benchmark, right?
Okay, this is our, like, 10 across the board.
Right. This would be Lancelot.
Yeah.
Lancelot is good early game, right? Why is it good early game? Well, it's a level 2, which means that it's from your second turn onwards. But it is early enough. Is it help you set up your field? Does it help you set up your deck for success? Probably. It's opening up lanes. It's got colorless as its cost too, which means that any deck could really use it. So it's at no point in time does it even have a fail function of, oh, I enter charged the wrong color. Therefore, I can't do it.
I can't remember. Does Lancelot have a life burst ability as well?
No, does not have a
okay.
life burst. Would be ridiculous if it had a life burst.
That would be like a 5.
Yeah,
like,
it'd
that
be
would
like,
just be like broken.
I think at that point you go like, yeah, your auto includes in every deck are servants and Lancelots.
Yeah. Even if you're not running red.
Right. I think
just
legally
toss
you
that
can
in there.
put that in your deck.
Yeah, there's nothing,
Yeah, I think it does. No, you are.
You can't.
You are only supposed to have the colors of your Elrics in your deck. You cannot put other colors in there.
Yeah, it did say that in the recent update. Okay, cool. Rule clarification. You can't run cards that don't match your
That includes the
Elrig.
multicolored cards.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So.
Wait, that includes the multicolored
Yeah,
cards?
because it's got you can't run. It's not you can run cards that share colors. It's you can't run cards that don't share colors.
Okay.
So if you have a red but you don't have black, then that's the no go. It's
All right.
like Commander MTG rules. So Lancelot's good in the early game.
Yes.
Lancelot's good in the mid game. Why? Or excuse me, at parity, because you're
parity.
breaking parity by opening up lanes.
Mm-hmm. Is it good when you're ahead?
I don't know. Is it?
I feel like it gets you more ahead.
Yeah, I mean you're opening up things and directly getting yourself into winning.
Mm-hmm. Does it help you when you're losing?
See, that's the question. I think the answer is you could make an argument for no there. Because
I would make that argument.
Because you could say, "Oh, as our dog is."
Sorry, she really wants attention, but
I think
she'll get it after the podcast.
I think you can make an argument that it does not do well when you're behind because it doesn't do anything that like gets you back in the game. Although you could also make the argument that crushing your opponent's life cloth is a way to get back into the game. And in that case, you go, yeah. So let's go ahead and give 0.5 for that one.
All right, we'll give this like a 3.5.
Great. So we see that Lancelot is a 3.5.
Very, very good.
Very
card.
good. Let's pull up another one.
Let's talk about. I'm roasting myself a little bit with this, as you guys. For those of you that have listened to our previous podcast, you will know that I mentioned this maybe more often than I should, that I attempted to build a Umar center deck and it failed miserably because of Quadrant Theory. So I want to talk about the level 3 Umar Larig. So it's Umar Trey, Key to Salvation. Team Ancient Surprise, you get action once per turn to move target Signy on your field to a different Signy zone, and an Enter, which is the ability to erase one of your opponent's Signy zones until end of turn. So
that line of text is ridiculous, by the way. I know it's not necessarily a great card, but
honestly,
that is a ridiculous line of text.
This is the only card that I have come across that has that line of text.
Yeah.
So
Mir don't play with her demons.
Andrew, would you like to go through the quadrants on this one?
Yes, I also want to ask why she has demon horns or ram horns if we're saying that she's an animal but then has bunny ears.
You know what? We can talk about that when I write and make the podcast going into the lore behind Ancient
All
Surprise.
right, you know what? I'm in. Yeah, I'm fully invested now. Let's go for it.
Okay.
I'll ask you the questions.
Oh no, don't make me defend her.
Defend Umir's honor.
Okay.
In early game setup or that kind of stuff, is it a good card?
No, because it's a level 3, so it doesn't come out until later in the game.
Ah, sure, I agree with that.
We could say that for all center Larigs.
Yeah.
But I think that's a little unfair. But it doesn't. No, the answer's no.
I agree, and it doesn't do anything that like would affect the early game, anyways. Like,
yeah,
I think when you do that, that's the realm of the assist. The assists are doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so we skip that one.
Yep.
Mid game. Let's assume mid game is turn 2, turn 3, turn 4 seems right. Turn 4 is a stretch. I think,
feel like
in
turn 4 is your late game. Anyways, so getting into the mid game with Parody, does this help when you are neck and neck with your opponent? Maybe with the ability to erase one of your opponent's Signy zones.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think
That's like an unconditional vanish, but also that thing doesn't exist anymore.
Like it just does not exist.
Yeah, just peace out.
You know
I think
what?
I think you discard it.
I think you have to put it into the trash. Yeah.
Okay. So it's not completely gone.
Yeah.
But the important thing, right, is it's like it's a better lane opener than most things, and here's why: you can't ambush fill it. If you put a handle out there, handle shows up and then goes into an empty slot, and then you look at that slot that doesn't, because it doesn't exist.
You can't put anything down in there. I'll read the text that's in parentheses under this. All cards in that zone are put into the trash. Players cannot put Signy into that zone.
Yeah, so it just
sure takes a lane away.
It breaks the hell out of Parody. I will agree there. Full point to Umir.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's go to the next one. Does this help you when you're already ahead and you are looking towards the finish line to win the game?
Sure. I think the answer is kind of. Because opening up one Signy zone, especially with your center, which could be doing quite a lot more, let's be honest, is not great at completely winning the game. It helps you win the game, which is good, so maybe you get a half point there. But lane switching, does that really help you with your...
It depends on the cards on the field. So because I think it's a little bit more dependent on other things being present,
sure.
I don't think...
Let's talk about what we have right now in set 0, 0, and 0, 1.
We have Circus.
Yeah, but is Circus helping you win the game?
No.
Exactly.
What about Quinn?
Quinn doesn't matter because you have to rearrange your opponent's things with Quinn, not your field.
And then there is that level 1 that helps you to lane switch with an additional, I think there's another level 2 that there's like a really cute combo with the two, where if you lane switch them, then they like kind of pump each other, but they're level 1s and Umar is a level 3.
Right, so
which means that those are not relevant at that point. So I would say it's not that great.
Yeah, sure. Let's go with a 0.5 for that because of the lane opening ability.
Sure. Yeah.
What about defensive?
No.
Does it help you if you're losing the game?
I mean, maybe if you don't have... Maybe if you wanted to swap Signies. So let's say that there's a, like, 13k Signy that is attacking a 8k, and you also... And maybe you've been able to pump something up and you want to put it in front of it so it can't attack through.
Can I say, if you're saying maybe this much, are you defending Umir, or are
you asked me to make an argument for this?
I think we need to go with concrete decisions when we're
okay.
Going
here's what I'll say: the reason why this would be a good defensive move is if you need to put something in front of a Signy that would not have something in front of it. So if you had, but it's on your turn, so like you're
talking yourself out of here.
Listen. Look, the answer is no. Okay, it's no. There's really nothing about that is defensive.
Okay.
Like in a good way.
I'm pulling out a random card.
Okay, random card time.
Madoka Slide.
Ooh, can I read that one? Actually, no. I gotta know.
Madoka Slide. It's a level 1 assist. Which enter as ability is colorless. Put target level 2 or less Signy on your opponent's field from onto the bottom of their deck. So I'll let you ask me the questions this time.
Okay. Does this help in your early game?
Yes.
Why?
Lane opening is a good thing to do in early game, or setting yourself up for success. It's a 0 cost grow, which means it's basically low barrier of entrance to really do damage early on.
It's also a level 1, so if you're going second, you could play this right away.
It's a pretty solid. I say it doesn't have the attack phase timing. If it had the attack phase timing, it'd be like, wow, yeah, great, woo, early game.
Yeah.
But I think this does the job.
Okay, what about Parody?
I would also say yes, because at Parody, you can open up a lane and get some damage in there. Like we said with Lancelot, that's a pretty good thing. Okay. It's less good, I will say, because it's got the restriction of level 2 or less, which means that late game Parody, not so great.
Not so great. So on that note, does this help if you're behind?
The answer, I think, again, if we're going to make the argument that lane opening doesn't necessarily help you if you're behind, I would say no. I think it would need the attack phase timing for me to confidently say, yes, it helps you when you're behind.
All right, what if you're winning?
Then I get to open up more lanes
ahead.
and I get more ahead with this card, so yes.
So we'll give this like a 2 to 3 out of 4?
Yeah.
Sort of? Okay. Next random card. Andrew's do you want to keep picking that?
I'll pull a random card out. Sure.
Okay.
Why not?
We've got like our like box of random
Oh,
cards.
this is a good one.
Ooh, okay. We've got Mars, Crimson Angel Queen. Very popular, also very shiny. So it's the level 3 Signy. Auto, whenever this Signy banishes a Signy on your opponent's field, put target card from your opponent's enter zone that doesn't share a color with your opponent's center Lurig into its owner's trash. On enter, discard 3 red cards from your hand. This Signy gains Assassin until end of turn. It is also a 12k power.
Yeah. So okay, let's start with it. Is it good? Is it good early?
No, it's a level 3.
It's a level 3, so it's not gonna happen, right?
No.
Cool. Immediately off there for that point.
Yeah.
But let's just stretch the is it good early to also being like, does it help with your deck game plan? Can this help with your deck's game plan?
I guess so.
Does it do any, like, okay, so it's a red card, so probably you're going to find it in a red deck wins. Does it open a lane?
Well, it doesn't open lanes all the way. What I will say is that because it's a level 3 and because it's a large thing, I would say that if you were to draw this in, like, after your mulligan, it's an easier decision to enter that.
Sure. To get rid of it. It does not necessarily
put it into your enter zone.
A good card.
I'm trying.
I think, for example, let me say this. If this card were Rose Quartz, which has the ability to do what that deck wants to do and helps towards that deck's game plan by discarding as well as opening up lanes, that would be a good card. And I don't think that this necessarily passes that.
I don't think so either.
It does some things.
So you're saying
some things, it's like, it's just kind of weird for those decks.
Is it conducive to what your center Lurig is trying to accomplish?
Yeah,
I would say like, like it kind
of
does its own thing, really.
Yeah. Is it good at parody?
I would say so, because what you're doing, outside of the enter cost, let's just talk about the, like, on attack ability. Not only are you blasting through a lane, now you're taking enter away from your opponent, if that goes through.
I agree.
Now, going back to the enter ability, discarding 3 red cards from your hand, like, kind of sucks. But if you gain Assassin, what you're doing is you're also taking enter away from your opponent.
I wholeheartedly agree.
So you are starving them pretty well while still being able to attack through.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this is actually pretty good where parody is concerned.
All right, so
does it help you win the game?
Yeah, it could.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard to, like, you can't block Signy attacks. So if something has Assassin and your opponent has a full board and they didn't somehow make you enter or discard your Mars, you just swing around those guys and you're like, that's a nice wall, I have a ladder. So
yeah, I agree.
I would say so. Also, like, late game enter starving, probably a good move, especially if you know your opponent's playing something like Nightmare Step, because that could be the one enter that stops that.
Yeah, I agree.
So I would say so.
Yeah, I think just being able to give Assassin to get that last damage in is something that potentially red decks want to do, and therefore
that could be
count.
your knockout move right there.
Yeah. And then does it help if you're behind?
If you don't have a lot of cards in your hand to discard for that Assassin,
yeah,
it's kind of like, wow, this is a really shiny 12k.
It's exactly what it is when you're behind. It's just the shiniest 12k.
Oh, wow, so fancy. At least that's how it has felt to me when I've been playing it. So I'll be like, it's a nice big shiny card, so I guess that's nice.
Yeah, I agree. So I would say this is something closer to a card that's like, yeah, it's okay, but it's not great.
Yeah,
because
it's very
where
looking.
it lands on that. Another good one would be, and let's just for time. Do you want to do Robin Hood so that I can say how bad it is?
Talk about Robin Hood.
Yeah, how bad it is. And then we can talk about the Harana and Towel comparison.
Okay, yeah, let's do it.
So here, I'll let you.
All right.
Take that one.
This is another shiny level 3. Robin Hood, Jade General Queen. It's also a 12k. Constant, as long as you have no other Signy on your field, this Signy gains auto. Whenever this Signy attacks, you may pay 1 green, 1 anything. If you do, put all Signy on your opponent's field into their enter zone. Auto. At the beginning of your attack phase, you may turn up to 2 target Signy on your field face down. At the end of this turn, if a Signy is not in the same position as the Signy turned face down this way, turn that Signy face up.
Yeah, so that's a very, very long and roundabout way to basically say when you attack, you can turn your 2 other Signy face down, so they disappear. Then you can wipe your opponent's board for 2 enter, and then at the end of the turn, those 2 Signy come back into play.
All right.
So
defend your card.
I will go for it.
Okay. Early game.
Oh, it's terrible. I mean, unless you want to say your defense, which is it's green enter. In which case, look, it's a good thing to bring up because the truth is, Wixoss does have a thing that most other card games don't. Where if you have a card that's better at a certain point in game and is not good right now, you can just enter it.
Yeah.
That is a real thing. So aside from being just green enter, the answer is no, it's not good early game.
Okay. All right, Parody.
It is actually not good at parody either, right? Because if your opponent removes this in response to your attack trigger, right, before you even get the chance to do the board wipe, it's awful. You just opened up a lane and your other 2 Signy are gone till end of turn, so they
technically don't exist.
Yeah, so they won't be able to attack. Even when they come back, you've now got an open lane and you deprived yourself of attacks. It's terrible. The floor on this card, awful.
Yeah.
So if you're at parity, no, I wouldn't risk it. I wouldn't play it.
Does it help when you're winning?
Oh, absolutely. And that's where the reason why I want to talk about it is it's very good when you're winning. Often, the often cost to open a lane is 2. So the ability to kill 3 things for 2 enter, especially if you're doing things like making them discard, is great. It's fantastic then. But you really don't want to risk putting it out there until you're like, okay, I've established control of this game and it's now time for me to win.
Like when you're 100% sure that this is going to go through.
Yeah,
I feel like this would only be good like turn 5 and beyond, like when your opponent has kind of exhausted everything else that they're doing.
Exactly.
And now we're just like dirtling till the end.
Yeah.
So, okay. And does this help when you're behind?
And see, you're going to see the thing I said last time, which is I wouldn't risk playing this until I've established control and I'm ready to win the game now, which means that if I don't have control, this card's horrible. I mean, I guess it's green enter, but it's bad.
Stop it. That's fine reasoning. I was so clever to think of that. Don't even.
It's a good thing. I wasn't making fun of you.
Yeah,
I was just thinking a joke.
Yes, you were.
It is not good. It is not good when you're behind. Wiping the opponent's field only to basically give them 3 enter to kick my ass harder with the next turn seems like a terrible idea.
So it doesn't help when you're behind.
Yeah. So I'll read these cards.
Okay.
Tiffany, you read the last 2.
Okay.
So we're gonna start with the level 3 towel, which is Towel Tray Awakened 1. It's Team Ancient Surprise. Grow cost is 2. Action is once a turn you can discard 2 red cards from your hand and then you can draw 2 cards. Its enter ability is look at the top 3 cards of your deck, reveal any number of red cards from among them and put those into your hand, put the rest on the bottom in any order. I should have said that the once a turn discard 2 red cards, draw 2 cards is a team ability. Whereas Harana is a step towards the top. She's team no limit. Her team constant ability is attacking Signy on your field, get plus 2,000 power. And the enter is draw a card, enter charge 1. And its action is once a game, you can have this Elrig gain auto. Whenever this Elrig attacks, you may down 2 up to level 2 Elrigs on your field. If you do, this Elrig deals damage to your opponent unless your opponent discards a card with guard until end of turn. Grow cost is 2. So the same grow cost. All right. So
we've kind of already established that Harana is sort of that like 3.5 to 3.5 to like 4 out of
totally
4.
to recap it, right? Hirana, does it help your deck do its function, if that's what we're going to try to establish step one, not necessarily just early game? The answer is yes. The attacking Signy getting a boost or the ability to get extra direct damage dealt is probably what you want to be doing in your mono red deck. Does it help you when you're at parity? And the answer is yes. Not only does it give you more resources by drawing a card,
and energy
or attack bonus, which helps you take down walls, or also dealing more damage, which is also a good way to do it. Yes, it does at parity. It's very good at parity. Is it very good at winning the game? The answer is yes.
Yeah.
It basically can deal direct damage, so it'll win you that game. Right? Does it help you when you're behind? And I think this is the only place where it sort of suffers. But you could argue that drawing a card... No, see, we said earlier drawing a card doesn't help you when you're behind. Ener charging might help you a little bit, but you're spending 2 Ener to do it, so it's not really...
you're still losing 1 Ener on that turn.
So I would say that's the only place it fails, is it doesn't really help you when you're behind.
Right.
Unless the way to beat a problematic Signy field is to beat the player, in which case I guess it does. It excels at beating, you heard that old term, I don't have any Signy removal there, but I do have player removal. So you just attack them and win that way. But that's Hirana in a nutshell. But let's talk about Towel.
All right, so we've got Towel Tray Awakened 1. Let's see. Does this help in the early game? Like, what kind of deck are we trying to build around this one? Now, a lot of people, I would say like mono red, obviously. I think most people will play mono red. So, but based off of the text alone,
does it help you setting up your game plan or winning the early game? I think the answer is no.
Not really.
At least not in the current meta.
The only thing that this text like inspires is like, how do you set up to win with this card? Run a mono red team. So I would say not really.
Does it help you when you're at parity? I would argue that it does. And
why would you say that?
Because your once a turn ability is to dig in your deck. So you can dig for your answers. You can dig for your big plays that'll get you ahead in the game.
But I thought you said that like drawing cards or like fixing your hand or whatever does not help you.
Doesn't help you in winning. It doesn't help you to win the game, or it doesn't help you from stop losing the game.
Oh, it just helps.
It helps you at parity though.
Okay.
Because like imagine you draw level 1. Your opponent's probably also drawing level 1. The edge that you get there is that you can now discard those level 1s and get your level 3s.
Okay. Does it help you when you're winning?
Does it?
I don't think so.
I don't think so, yeah.
Like, all this is doing is really just fixing your hand, and that's it.
Yep.
Which I don't really think that helps necessarily when you're losing either.
Nope.
Because all this is saying is like cycle through cards and find a better card than what you have.
Yeah. When we say, Hirana's a better card than Towel, the reason isn't necessarily because it's a worse card. The reason is it's not as flexible. It doesn't do any of the thing. It's like having if you had 1 cannon on your tank aligned forward and 2 aligned to the sides, it might be better to have all 3 pointed at the target.
Forward, yeah, I would say so. And that's kind of why I think that's also the reason why people kind of tend to lean away from Ancient Surprise, just because overall their Lyrigs are just not, they don't check off as many boxes for Quadrant Theory as the decks that we've seen for the 001 set. So that's kind of, so this kind of like sums up why we pick the cards that we do when we're testing the decks that we are, and why, when we go up against different things, when we're going out to like competitions or just like regular games or whatever, we'll look through the cards that we haven't seen people play before and then kind of compare it back to this sort of these parameters.
It's important to not get so results oriented that if someone beats you with a card that's off the wall, that you go home and go, oh, that card must be good, right? You should go home and evaluate that card yourself and be like, was it good in that scenario? Was it good because my deck wasn't good or I made bad decisions, or was it good because it's good in this scenario and it's not a good card otherwise? And
like Robin Hood.
Yeah, like Robin Hood, which is
I'm just saying.
No, I'm sure there are people I've beaten with Robin Hood that then went home and put 4 of them in their deck and was like, yeah, that's a good card. And then it's like it led them to lose more games than that.
Yeah.
I'm running 1 to 2 because I don't want to see it often.
Yeah. And I've actually made sort of similar choices with the No Limit deck, where I've decided that what's the one that rises?
Nobunaga.
Yeah, I decided that one was a little bit better than when I was pulling a Mars. I found that I got more use out of a Nobunaga, but I wouldn't recommend having 3 of them in your deck. I would say like a max of 2.
Nobunaga is very good when you're winning and not great on other places.
Not great. It's especially bad when you're behind. So, that's kind of our reasoning behind some of the decks that we build. I would love to know how you guys would score some of these cards. Like, what are some of your arguments for cards that we may have scored lower, or would you score a different card that you really like higher? Let us know in the comments section down below. We'd love to read through it, and maybe we'll play test some of those cards in our decks.
Hey, I did actually, to close this conversation, I did actually think of a card that is OP and is a 4 out of 4.
What is it?
It's so integral to the game. I just completely forgot it existed.
Is it a card?
It's a card. Yeah, it's Servant Sharp. Is it good early game? Yes. It can come out and block things. It can come out and attack life cloth on an open lane. Is it good when you're at parity? Yes, because you're stopping the opponent from being able to make movements towards winning that game. Is it good when you're winning a game? Yeah, because it ensures that you get that game a little later down the line. And then is it good defensively? And the answer is yeah, it's the best defensively.
And that's why when you're building a deck, you're not building a 40 card deck. You're building a 36 card deck.
Yeah, you're always starting with 36.
Because you better put your 4 guards in there first before you forget about them. That's true, actually. That's the one.
Yeah, I did. So, and probably why, little history lesson here. The older formats had multiple servants that you could run, and Diva has been like, no, you can only have 1 copy of servant ever. Thank you, goodbye.
You mean 4 of them?
Yeah, 4 copies of them, but only one thing. One, because there's like Servant Sharp, there's Servant D, there's Servant A.
Oh.
In the older formats.
I didn't know that. I was wondering why all of them were Servant
you could run multiple servants.
Well, there you have it, guys. We found the perfect card. And we'll probably continue to be the perfect card forever, until DMX comes out.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, they still use four guards.
I'd be sure.
So it's still the best deck.
Anyway, we'll cross that bridge when we get to
Will
it.
we cross that bridge when we get there?
Whoa!
And guys, as always, I hope that you flip a life burst.
Do it.